Tēnā koutou katoa. My name is Tamsin. I edit under the name of Dr. Threed. And as of last week, I'm Wikimedian in residence at the University of Otago here in New Zealand. I'm going to talk about making lists from Wikidata to support editing workflows. And this is a presentation that I gave yesterday at the Wikidata Ancestor Projects event, but the recording started a bit late and missed the start of the talk, and I had technical issues with advancing the slides. Jitsi and Google Sheets and Google Slides and Firefox did not want to play nice together, so I thought I would re-record a cleaner version. So because this is a half-hour talk, and I want to leave time for discussion, I knew I wouldn't be able to show everything I wanted about the tools, especially how to use them, really. So I've made 3 screen captures, which are available on YouTube. So there's one for each of the 3 tools I'm going to discuss. There's Listeria and the Wiki List Tool. Those 2 videos are about 10, 11 minutes each. And then there's a 20-minute video for Petscan, because I go through a greater range of workflows with that one. And honorary mention to Open Refine, which I'm not covering today, but is also great for this kind of work. So you can find links to those videos that I've just shown on my Wikipedia user page and on my Wikidata user page. I'll also, when I upload this video to YouTube, put the links in the description or in the comments or somewhere, so you can find them a bit more easily. So into Listeria, which is also known as the Wikidata List template, which gives you a bit of a clue as to how it works. So Listeria is for making dynamic tables by pulling data from Wikidata using Sparkle. So the first requirement is that you can define your items with Sparkle. And that can be as simple as items that are on the focus list of a particular wiki project, items that are described by a specific source. It can get more complicated, items that are an instance of some kind of building in a particular region or something. Once you've made your list, it updates on a regular schedule. The default is weekly, but you can change it. There's also a way to update your list manually if you know the data's changed. And you can use Listeria on Wikipedia or Wikidata. I understand from comments it was available on Wikivoyage, but there might be problems now. So it is available in a variety of places. And you can find information about it on the template page in Wikipedia. So I find it good for work lists I want to go back to again and again, especially where other people might be contributing data on Wikidata as well as myself. I also want to know it's really good for seeing the history of data. So you have a table, every time that table updates, the old table is available in the revision history of the page. So you can see what your table looked like at different points in time, which can be quite helpful. You do need a tiny bit of Sparkle to set it up. You don't need it more than once. You can just set your table up and that's that. Of course, you can go back and change it if you have changing requirements, but it's not necessary. And the tool can be set to filter your query results. So you define the list that you want, and then you say, for instance, I only want items in this list that haven't got a Wikipedia page. So you're making a red list. Or you can define, I want everything that does have a Wikipedia page. Maybe you want to go and improve a bunch of pages. Or you can have both, and you can link to Wikipedia or Wikidata, or there are various settings. And you can include whatever Wikidata properties you like, so it's quite flexible, and you can include qualifiers in that. I'll also note you can have more than one table per page. It used to be one Listeria, one page, but you can now do more than one. So just to demonstrate for people, I imagine that the biggest hurdle in using Listeria is getting that Sparkle to begin with. So I just want to point out you can use things like the Query Helper, or there's another tool called the Query Builder, which will help generate that Sparkle for you if you're not confident using it yourself. So this is just a really simple query. There's a website in New Zealand called the Early Medical Women of New Zealand. It's got couple of hundred biographies of people on them, which are quite well researched. Every time I've matched one of them to Wikidata, I've put on this statement described by source and the name of the website. And so that's one way I can define a Listeria list. And then I can tell it to bring me back for each of those people, the image, the date of birth, the date of death, and described URL. So I've built that query on the left-hand side using those nice visual drop-down boxes, and the Sparkle that matches that appears on the right-hand side. So then all I have to do is copy that and paste it into the right template. So I tend to build my Listeria lists on user pages in Wikipedia. So I make a new page and I put in the Wikidata list template and then paste in my sparkle. It looks like this, the blue bit's the sparkle that I just took from the previous slide. Underneath that is a yellow section where you tell the tool whether you want red links only, blue links both, and so on, how to sort the results it's bringing back, and then you can tell it what you want the columns called. So it's fairly straightforward. The important thing to remember, I do sometimes forget, is to put Wikidata list end template at the bottom. And what happens is after you've saved your new page and run the tool, it will put all of the data it's found and filtered for you in between those two templates. So this is what the top of the table that I created looks like, this early medical graduates. It's very simple and straightforward because I haven't done a lot with this data yet. They need images, they need birth and death dates still. And what I'm probably going to do as the workflow for this is improve the Wikidata on these simple items. And then I'm going to make this table a bit more interesting and add in some other properties like awards, for instance, or places people were employed and things that might help me assess if people are notable or not. And then I can look through and see who might merit an article. This is another list I've got, female professors in New Zealand. I've been using this one on and off for several years because every year when the universities announce who they've promoted to full professor, which is a big deal, I'll go through and put those statements into Wikidata. And that means that I can use this table then, it brings in award statements and so on. And that helps me to see who might have enough information about them to meet notability criteria. So I use it a lot for work lists, red lists in particular, and you'll find hundreds of these kinds of lists in the Women in Red red list section. So if you're looking for ideas about how to set up list areas, that's a great place to go to for examples. But you can also, of course, create a list article with it. So this is a list article on English Wikipedia called List of Historic Places in Hokitika. So someone put all the historic buildings into Wikidata some years ago. So you can build a comprehensive list of them. And I started this page as a Listeria table in user space so that I could discuss with other editors what columns we wanted, how we wanted the data arranged, whether there were items missing, that kind of thing. And once we'd established how we wanted it to look, I moved it across into main space. Of course, in English Wikipedia, when you move a Listeria table into main space, it will become a non-dynamic table. And from that point on, you have to update it manually. But that's not the case in every language Wikipedia. So it's worth knowing that this is a good tool for setting these kinds of lists up. Petscan. Now, I love Petscan, but I've only relatively recently got to grips with it. So I'm very eager to share what I've learned in order that other people can use it as well. So Petscan's superpower is that it can query across Wikimedia projects and give you very specific lists. So for instance, if you wanted English Wikipedia pages that are in two particular categories, less than a certain size, with an info box, in a particular wiki project, with a Wikidata item that uses coordinates or some other feature, you can do that with Petscan. And if you think about the information you would need to put together that query, you've got to know information from the page itself to know what categories it's in and what size it is and whether it has an info box. And then you need information from the talk page to know if it's got that Wiki Project New Zealand template. And then you need information from the Wikidata item to know if it uses coordinate location, for instance. So it's combining those sources of information. That's what Petscan is brilliant at. Now, I found it quite intimidating when I first looked at it. It is less complicated than it looks, but it has lots of empty boxes and radio buttons and checkboxes and stuff, so it looks complicated. One key feature, you can save a link to your query to use it again, which is really nice if it's a workflow that you want to come back to again and again. And this is what it looks like. You can access the manual up there on the top left, and there are examples on the top right, which I'd recommend looking at. And I deliberately put some categories in here because one of the most silly little barriers to me using this tool was understanding the syntax. I didn't know how to refer to the categories. Did I need to put in category colon and then the name? Did I need to put square brackets around it? And if I wanted to put more than one category, what separator did I use? It turned out you don't need to worry about those things. There is no category, there's no colon, there's no square brackets. And if you want more than one category, you just put them on separate lines. But you do need to get the category name exactly right as it's used on the Wikipedia, in whatever language you're using. Okay, and then you can define, do you want the intersection or the union of these categories and how many levels to go down the category tree and categories that you want to exclude from your query and that kind of thing. So there are 5 different tabs for how you're going to set up your query, and then there's another one to define what you want in the output. And I go through those in more detail in the screen capture that I've done. In particular, I've gone through several different queries, just showing how to set them up as examples so that, and to give people ideas, it's such a flexible tool. There'll be lots of ways of using it that I haven't even thought of, but these are the ways that I know how to use it. So the first thing I showed was how to find articles that you can translate. I looked for, I think, New Zealand scientists who had an Italian Wikipedia article, but not an English one. You can also find articles to improve. So you could look, for instance, in staff categories. That's an obvious way to do it. But you can also look by size, which is quite nice, especially because things don't always end up in the staff category or being removed from it when they're longer and so on. You can look by features, or templates. So you can look for orphan articles, things that are missing an image or an info box in a category that you like. You can find articles with Wikidata that can be improved. So for instance, you could look in, 1938 births and make Petscan find you those Wikidata items that haven't got a birth date. So that would be a good workflow. One thing I came across recently is checking articles against a list article, which is really neat and saves you doing it line by line. So what you can do is say, for instance, everything in the category New Zealand architects, let's make sure that they're listed in the list article for New Zealand architects, because we're great for writing architects articles in New Zealand, but we're not so good at putting them on the New Zealand architects list article. And Petscan can do that cross-check very quickly for you. You can find articles that have no Wikidata item yet, and that enables a particular mode in Petscan where it will give you a link to duplicity, which gives you a side-by-side comparison of the Wikipedia article and any possible Wikidata items. So you can flick through and look and see if there is a Wikidata item that might match. And for ones where there isn't, you can create them using quick statements straight from Petscan. So that's quite nice. I've played a bit more with that recently. And then the last query that I show on Petscan is querying structured data on comments, which was a suggestion from another user, Jeremy. And we look for line art and unicorns. So I haven't played with structured data queries a lot, but I think that's quite a cool use of Petscan. And the last tool I want to talk about is the Wiki List Tool, which I think needs a better name. So this is a Google Sheet-based tool. It interacts with Wikipedia and Wikidata, and it uses a browser extension, Wikipedia and Wikidata tool. So you'll need to have that installed before you can use the tool. But what the Wiki List tool also has is some custom scripts, which were installed by Andrew Lee at the Smithsonian, and they get the current revision ID for an article, and based on that, the article quality from the OR score and page views. So if you don't need those features, the revision ID, the ORs, and the page views, then you can just go ahead and use the browser extension in any Google Sheet. However, if you do want those things, then you'll need to duplicate one of the Wikilist sheets from the Wikilist tool page in order that you get those custom scripts. So I find this tool good for event-based stuff, making lists for editathons, working out who at an event you might want to take headshots of. That's something we've been doing all this weekend at a medical school event. So it's very flexible. So you don't have to be able to define your items with Sparkle. You can just work off a list of names you've found in a program or something, type in the names. If people haven't got Wikipedia articles, you can use QIDs. You can have a mixture of both in the same Google Sheet. These are again dynamic lists, but more dynamic than Listeria. They don't update weekly. They update, every time you go in and refresh the tab or whatever. So it depends on what's on Wikidata and what's on Wikipedia. I do find personally they can be a bit glitchy. Certainly when you get up to, they're good for, Andrew says a couple of hundred names. I think it depends on how many columns you have. I'm prone to adding a lot of columns to look at different identifiers in Wikidata. And obviously, the more columns you have, the fewer rows you can have because you max out the Google Sheets ability to do API calls. Every cell is another API call. So if you find it getting glitchy, you might just have maxed out the number of API calls and delete tabs or columns you don't need, or consider setting up a second sheet. I also just find, I opened up the sheet last week and it was a sea of errors, even though it had worked a couple of hours earlier, and it was fine again the next day. So, just be aware it's not 100% reliable. The functions and formulae, I think, can be a bit intimidating to start with, but they're not that hard to learn. So this is an example. This is the sheet I was using this weekend. I typed in the names of the speakers down the left-hand side, and some of them, Xavier Walker doesn't have a Wikipedia page, so I went off and found his QID on Wikidata and brought it back, and then it pulls in information. Here you can just see the stuff from Wikidata, but further across in the sheet, it's pulling in information from Wikipedia as well. And that's the front page of the tool. But the second page of the tool will show you this nice little graph of your article quality. So if you're running an editathon around an event, we weren't this weekend, but if we had been, we might be looking at, maybe we'll focus on those start class articles and improve them. Or maybe we'll look at that group of 21 people who are missing and see if there's anyone notable in there. So that's a nice second sheet. And the third one focuses on headshots. So it will show you the page views I chose by year. You can choose any time frame, and it shows you the current headshot of someone and, in fact, whether one is missing. So we were able to tap Lynette on the shoulder and say, come and have a headshot taken, because we could see she was missing it. Another thing you can do with these Google Sheets is set up tables on Wikipedia fairly easily. So if you're doing an editathon, it's quite handy. So this is a sheet that I made earlier in the year for an International Women's Day event, where I wanted to create a nice long list of articles that just needed a small amount of editing that people could work on. And so I built my data. You see the gray stuff here is from Wikipedia. The yellow stuff is the Wikidata. I just copied it and took it across to a website where you can convert it to a wiki table. And that looks like this, which looks a lot more complicated than it is. It's just 3 sections. You paste in your data at the top. The middle section lets you delete columns you don't need. And then the bottom one, you can just copy. It puts your data as a wiki table, so you can just copy it into the clipboard. I will just mention, if you want links on your articles, you'll see the blue links on the Wikipedia pages here, put them in the Google Sheets stage. It's much easier to do it there than any other place, and you don't want to have to add them manually to your table. So yeah, it's really easy to make these sorts of tables that have annual views and file names for the images and so on, using this Google Sheets. So those are the 3 tools that I wanted to cover today. Thank you for your attention. These are my contact details. And one thing I would love to hear is what clever workflows other people have come up with, both with these tools and maybe any other list making tools that I don't know about. I would love to hear if people want to get in touch. Thank you.